Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi to discuss what is happening in Rajouri with Pakistan. Pakistani Kashmir dreams, updated or not, is something that I want to discuss with Lieutenant General Satish Dua, who's joined us today, an experienced general within that region who knows that region like the back of his hand. And as a matter of fact, who's also aware of the Pakistani intentions, as much as he would not like to tell us what he exactly knows, but I'm sure he can help us understand what is going through the Pakistani mind. Thank you so much, sir, for joining in. It's a discussion that I want to focus on towards Pakistan's Kashmir dreams. And I'm going to say that very, very emphatically. First of all, thank you so much and Jai Hind.
Thank you, Adi, for having me here on this discussion, and I'm looking forward to this discussion with you. Jai Hind, everybody.
So, the main thing that a lot of people in Pakistan are talking about today, especially the media and stuff like that, is that has the Pakistani establishment, and I'm not going to say the government because they don't have anything in their hand, have they started to change the rhetoric as far as Kashmir is concerned? Is their outlook starting to change because of the one attack? Yes, but the regularity of these attacks have reduced quite a bit. So, is there a change in terms of their understanding, their thought processes, or their outlook towards Kashmir?
Adi, the short answer is no. There is no change as far as the Pakistani mindset or their attitude towards Kashmir is concerned. True that at the present moment, they are surrounded, engulfed, overwhelmed by their own problems, which are at different planes: financial crisis, political turmoil or instability. Diplomatically, they are at a very low point. The relations between the institutions like the military, the judiciary, the executive are very rocky. So, because they are involved in so many of their internal issues, um, maybe the rhetoric on Kashmir does not find so much space as it used to do earlier. But I don't think for a moment that they have forgotten Kashmir. In fact, I have said it often, and I think with you as well in a couple of earlier discussions. Kashmir is the glue that binds Pakistan. Pakistan has a lot of problems, but Kashmir Banega Pakistan is the everlasting slogan in their minds, whether they chant it aloud or do that frequently or not.
I didn't
Uh,
expect a different answer, sir. But let me just say that when you hear it again, it kind of hits you in the wrong place. You wanted to say something, sir?
no, so you also asked me a question about the. I mean, in your question, it was also built in if the number of attacks have reduced. So I just wanted to address that as well before I
Yes,
finish.
sir.
Look, the situation in Kashmir has improved. There used to be so much violence in the streets by stone pelting, narebazi, sloganeering, etc. Today, there isn't any one of that. There used to be buns and hartals. A calendar used to be issued by the Hurriyat. That is not happening for different reasons. Now, let's not go into that. How their fund flow is being impacted, how the security situation in Kashmir is under a firm control today. So there are not of much of that happening. The anti-infiltration grid is by and large very robust. So there is no or very little instances of infiltration or nil exfiltration for training. So the terrorists are not able to train. So we are finding newer methodologies and techniques like the hybrid terrorists coming up, targeted killing, soft targets, and things like that. But number of incidents have reduced. Then for this reason, and then they have activated south of Pir Panjal because
Mm.
Comparatively speaking, in south of Pir Panjal, we found things were under control, and there has been um, a relative thinning out of troops because things were under control. So, trying to take advantage of that, there has been this incident in Punch. There was this incident in Rajouri some time ago when a few civilians were targeted. Then there was this incident in Punch the day Bilawal Bhutto's um, it was he accepted the invitation to come to Goa physically rather than doing it online. That a day after that, there was this incident where five soldiers were killed in Bataduria in Punch district. Uh, so, what happened day before yesterday, of course, was as a sort of consequence of that, where we had an intel-based operation in which we suffered, that is, the Indian Army suffered losses. That was a separate incident, but so that is their is because they've started to activate south of Pir Panjal. So that's where it rests. The number of incidents, I just analyzed that for you, but I don't think they have by a long shot forgotten the issue of Kashmir.
So what we see as an internal rhetoric now, I want to actually break this down a little bit, is that the attack in Poonch, which was the first one that took place, could be related to the internal politics of Pakistan. It was probably that the army chief or the army or the establishment was sending a message to Bilawal Bhutto that, listen, dude, you're going there. Don't try and think that you can fix the relationship without us. So the chances of any such fix was cut off. On the other hand, just by him coming here, there's a rhetoric called "Aap Kashmir ko to bhool gaye," which is coming across, which tells me that this whole story or this whole action that was planned or executed by the establishment or the ISI in Pakistan is to do a lot with their own internal politics rather than actually a target towards the Indian armed forces or India. Would you kind of agree to something like that, sir? And not keeping the search and destroy operations, which is on as we speak, even, but the first attack that took place in Poonch.
Well, what you say is also true. The deep state there wanted to send this message across to the peaceniks within their own establishment, that all is not well. Don't think that you can go and talk about peace or because initially at some point of time, this government, Shehbaz Sharif as a PM, did make some conciliatory statements, which were not liked by the army establishment. Now, so that is there. But what I was discussing earlier, so I think there is a sort of there is a little convergence of interest in having such like operations which sent out having an operation of this type which sends out a strong message. I even wouldn't put it beyond the way this operation was planned, where five soldiers were killed and the vehicle was blown up. Um, they were fired from all three sides. Then the way sticky bomb was used, it really smacks of some expertise. I wouldn't put it beyond them having sent one or two SSG guys to sort of coordinate the operations. While that remains to be seen, but the fact of the matter is, yes, it was meant to be a strong statement.
I mean, the strongest statement that I can't put down my throat is that you say I who better to take a word from an experienced army officer is the factor that you're saying that this operation was very precise and there might be certain elements from the Pakistani army or the Pakistani special forces who are guiding this particular operation. For me, that's a bit of a uh, hard to swallow factor. Why would they do something like that at the moment? So apart from this internal politic, this thing, uh, that is one interest of it. You also said it's a conversion of interest. What could be the other interest?
No, I said convergence of interest between uh, activating south of Pir Panjal because north of Pir Panjal, as it is, the grid was very strong, about which I
Uh,
spoke earlier.
yes, sir.
And second issue is convergence of interest is within the establishments to give a message to the political establishment, by army's message or the deep state message to the political establishment, that don't go conciliatory, and that's why they carried out this attack.
So the second part of the rhetoric, or the second part of the understanding of this particular attack, could also be looked at from a factor which is a which is has a lot to do with their internal politics. You have the army fighting with the Supreme Court to kind of push back the election, saying that we are busy with threats from raw and so on and so forth. Could this attack also be looked at from a factor that they know that India will retaliate? And when it does, the army comes on the upper hand because they can say, see, we told you there's a threat. Uh, i- this is something which feels a lot more probable and is being spoken about by a lot many of I won't say regular, but some of the Pakistani bloggers as well. How do you see that as a reasoning for this particular attack, which is again to do a lot more to do with their internal politics?
Um, you are absolutely right, Adi, that they have given a report to say why the elections should not be held now. Uh, and one major reason amongst them is the security threat from across the border with India, from India. So they would do anything to provoke Indian reaction. This high-profile terror attack being one of them, and so we can actually we live under that. If I may use the word, we live under that threat nowadays, that they would like to provoke us into doing something, that so that they can use that as a leverage to hold off elections, which they seem to be keen to be doing at the moment. Because at the moment, Imran Khan's popularity seems to be at a point where if their elections are held today, it appears nearly certain that he will win, and
Mhm.
that is not acceptable to any of the institutions at the present moment. Though there are deep divisions within each, but at the present moment, that is Imran Khan coming back is not an acceptable thing for both for the establishment.
So how do you think this is connected to the G20? This, is there anything to a factor within that front, because the Pakistanis have been expressing their dissatisfaction, if I may, with regards to India's decision to hold one of the G20 summits in Kashmir.
That is true. This month we are going to have one of the meetings, one of the G20 events in Srinagar. As everyone is aware, just to put all the readers on the same, all the listeners, the viewers on the same page, um, uh, India has decided to hold the G20 events in all states and union territories, and we are doing that. So in so doing, we have this event in Kashmir as well. Uh, this will give us an opportunity, India, an opportunity to showcase to the rest of the world uh, uh, about how normal the situation is in Kashmir, to expose the lie, the propaganda that Pakistan puts out, that Kashmir is under siege and things like that. And so it will showcase to the world. It will be a very good opportunity to showcase to the world as to how things are going on in Kashmir. And that is one of the prime reasons why uh, Pakistan will always keep activating it. It is also to sort of instill a fear in the minds of the people, whether it is in Kashmir, north of Pir Panjal, or in the south. Incidents will keep happening. Terrorist violence will keep happening to show the people, to instill a kind of fear in them, lest they start getting too cozy that things are moving back towards normalcy.
One can't predict the future of Pakistan, sir, but as per the books, 2026 is the time when Pakistan will also hold a SEO summit. Do you think there's going to be a tit for tat? And it's just a long term thought. Uh, by holding a certain meeting in the Pakistan occupied Kashmir, just as a retaliatory message, as per se, towards India.
Well, if they do hold a meeting or an event in POK, it doesn't take away anything from our claim. In fact, I, on a personal note, would welcome it if they hold a meeting there, because the the dismal sort of state of development that POK is in, I doubt that they will take that chance to show that to the world. I mean, it's an open secret that POK, the condition is the on of Kashmir on both sides of the LOC is very different, is wide apart. So I pers- so on two counts. One, it does not take away anything from the legitimacy of our country's claim. After all, it was with us in 1947, and it's only after the 47-48 ops that this line came in between and agreed to as an interim border. And so it doesn't take away anything from India's claims. And secondly, as I said, I don't think that they would be uh, too keen to show to the world as to in what state of development or not is the POK is in.
I must say, well handled, sir. That one is a super answer. So there are certain news, of course. The CPEC Part Two, Asim Munir goes to China, and the CPEC Part Two is supposed to be coming up. Firstly, your thoughts on this whole CPEC Part Two, which again goes through POK and Gilgit Baltistan, which is our land. Just an opening thought with that, and after that, I want to ask you, which is the second part of the question, is the factor that there have been news reports that the Chinese soldiers are being embedded within Pakistani units within the Pakistani side of Kashmir. I wonder the veracity of these reports. So, firstly, do you believe something like that? And two, what is the significance of something like this happening?
Right. Mm, sorry, what was the first part again?
So, the CPEC Part 2.
Yeah. Now you see, CPEC is a very grandiose project, and like a flagship of the BRI as far as China is concerned. They have run into difficulties for various reasons. I'll not get into a discussion on CPEC, but China has already sunk in, I should say invested. Um, but I use the word sunk in because anything you invest in Pakistan, there is no hope of getting it back. So I'm
Right,
using
right.
the word sunk in. So if they've already sunk in, say, 45 odd billion dollars, somewhere thereabouts, the figure, with no hope of any returns, then they're perhaps going to make Pakistan a vassal state. They'll have to give them something else, like furthermore concessions in Gwadar port or some land on lease, some other things they'll have to offset. So that, but do we see CPEC being wound up just because Pakistan doesn't have money to repay the debts? I don't think so. When China has sunk in so much money, they are bound to make it work. If even if it is not to the exactly full or fully to the plan as envisaged on the drawing board earlier, but to whatever extent they will certainly draw their pound of flesh. To your and that is, and we also see the new chief Asim Munir going to China,
Hmm.
and his I mean, there was a lot of talk about his body language when he met the dignitaries there. So we see that Pakistan Army is going to be supporting it as of now. As to your question about having Chinese military personnel in the Pakistan Army formations, uh, I, for one, do not give much credence to it. Um, we like it or not, I would like to stick out my neck to say that Pakistan Army is a professional army. It is a very professional army. It is the last institution that Pakistan falls back on every time, and I don't think they would have Chinese presence in formations and units. There are reports of some sort of security organization for their own establishments around the CPC or some places where, because there have been attacks by by the rebels, by the terrorists, by the people who don't like the CPC. So, isolated incident on the Chinese establishment. Some of the engineers were attacked and some personnel were attacked. So, for that, they may have had some of their security elements, some security personnel, but to embed people like a political commissar, the way they have it in the Chinese army, PLA, I don't think that would be true.
I think you brought about something very interesting, which puts me to a question that in the past few, I would say, 1 or 2 years, post the Balakot strikes and stuff like that, there's been relative quiet from there. There've been incidents about civilian killings and stuff like that, targeted civilian killings, and you and I have spoken on this particular channel on that, sir.
Yes.
Uh, what I want to talk to you about is that have we as Indians kind of missed the Pakistani threat, which has been brewing, which is ever present, and which is now showing its ugly head, sir?
Well, I I wouldn't say that we have missed the Pakistani threat. As far as we've always got our eye on the ball, because for us, Pakistan remains to be threat. Maybe a too large a word. I would say China is a bigger adversary,
Hmm.
but Pakistan will always remain an irritant, a nuisance. True, it is beyond below a certain threshold, but it will remain in an irritant, a reality that we have to deal with at more planes than one. So I don't think we have sort of forgotten is too strong a word when you said we've forgotten the threat, but no, we haven't.
Okay. So, we spoke about the G20, we spoke about the Pakistani internal problems, we've spoken about the politics within Pakistan. Uh, there is, of course, a certain amount of contact that the Pakistanis had with the local Kashmiris, which has been established over 35, 40 years. With your eye on the ground and with your ear on the ground, if I may, what do you hear, sir? What are people saying when they see stuff like this happening? Because a very touching photograph or a very touching video that came out of those two, that the accident of the Army Aviation Corps, which happened with that helicopter going down, and the kind of local, uh, I mean, this guy was holding his hand, and it was a very different thing that we've seen before. What is the word on the ground? So when people in that region hear about these kind of incidents happening again, and hear about the losses of our soldiers, is there a change that you can see? Is there a change in the narrative? Is there a certain amount of anger? What do you hear, sir?
You know, when I was a co-commander 7 years ago, 8 years ago, uh, when we eliminated Burhan Wani, it was summer of 2016. The valley burnt for next 3 to 4 months. There was so much violence on the streets. The CRPF and the police had to open fire on violent protesters. There were several casualties running into tens and scores of civilian casualties. I recall an incident where one Titan, one truck, army truck, overturned on the road. It was just an accident. Despite there being so much sort of sentiment against the security forces, people from their village ran out to rescue the soldiers trapped in the vehicle, and a lot of help was given by them, and this got very good media publicity as well. What I was trying to say, when you see this incident of how that aviator is being helped by the villagers, all I want to tell you, this does not represent or negate wherever in the pockets, wherever alienation is there. It
Hmm.
only shows the basic human goodness of the people. And in fact, we must put a lot to store by that of the people in Kashmir as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, you see, it is an act of humanity. Uh, I look at it like this. Uh, For a soldier, when he goes after terrorists, there is no personal enmity. And I think the same holds true for the people. Yes, true that there is a radicalized element who may be very fanatic, uh, but in every village or every place, let us say this, those Jawans in the truck or this aviator had fallen in a pocket which was totally radicalized. I still feel somebody would have come out and helped him. So my point is, this should not be read as the people of JNK are pro army. Neither should some alienated pockets, or see, it's very tough today to put a percentage on how many people are still alienated and how many are
Hmm.
not. Let's say
Hmm.
over
Hmm.
the 3 years, the situation is being improved, is improving. So there is, just because things are heading back towards normalcy, schools are open and markets are open and tourists are flourishing. So if just because of that, is the alienation over? No, it isn't. So any if you take any or say any thing very strongly, it would be an oversimplification. So everything is existing side by side. It will take time for that alienation to go. It may take a generation or two for that kind of a shift in mindsets to come.
Any specific feeling that has been communicated to you, so with regards this dastardly attack that has taken place?
Well, there are pockets of people who are um very, very angry about this attack on the military personnel, but a large majority of Kashmiri people will remain silent, would actually just remain silent at the moment. They don't want to incur the wrath of the terrorists, or they are themselves uh, alienated. Uh, Either which way, they will be forced to keep to remain silent.
That's a very pragmatic answer, and that's a very realistic answer, I must say. Thank you so much for that, sir. My last question to you, of course, people are clamoring for a response. People are clamoring for somebody's head to get, you know what, uh, roll down the hill or whatever it is. People are clamoring for surgical strikes or air strikes or this and that and the other. I always ask, will that sort out the problem? It won't. It'll probably send a message. It'll probably be a good strategic communication that you're able to do. What is your thoughts? How should we respond to something like this? Because at the moment, as we discussed, if we do respond, we'll be playing in their hands. So, this is quite an interesting situation that we find ourselves into, sir. What should India do?
No, I mean, see, a military response to any high-profile attack has to be divorced from what is the political signaling it would be. Our country is not like China, and
Hmm.
these responses would be formulated by cold, calculated analysis of the military minds. What is the response? How should it be fashioned? Uh, should it be like a surgical strike or a Balakot strike, or should it be something different? Should it be economic? Should it be political? Should it be diplomatic isolation? So those responses will have to be fashioned at with a cool mind, and not because, like you said, people are clamoring for some heads
Hmm.
to roll and some uh, visible response to be there. I don't think these decisions are going to be made, should be made, and are not going to be made and should not be made uh, uh, by such. I won't use the word pressures, but by such, falling for such optics.
Again, I think another pragmatic answer is that India is find itself in a very, very difficult situation. And how do you? My last question to you would be about a communication that needs to be obviously sent to Pakistan, a communication that needs to be given to the rest of the world about what has happened. How do you think that should be worded, sir? That should be aggressive, that should be mild, that should be mannered, or that should be the Indian style, which is this is what happened, and let's see what we do further.
I think that response to this question has been given very effectively by our External Affairs Minister, as he summed up the meeting in which the Pakistan Foreign Minister was there along with other foreign ministers. How is spoken about Pakistan. And I mean, I really, words to this effect, I don't remember the exact words, like, as a prime minister, as a foreign minister of a member state, he is welcome, but we don't sit with the perpetrators of terror. You can't talk peace with perpetrators of terror. And such nice words. I think that really sums up what is India's response. And not only sums up, he has stated it as a statement to the rest of the world, and by that same extension, we have given our stance to Pakistan in no uncertain terms.
Thank you so much, sir. This was a very pragmatic talk, if I may say that, very realistic and pragmatic talk, because
Thank you.
sans the rhetoric which flies around the place. Of course, rhetoric is good; it scares the opponent, but rhetoric all the time doesn't really make sense because rhetoric does not make policy, and rhetoric does not give you realism as to what is happening on the ground. Thank you so much for boosting that realism into this discussion, sir, because that is what is needed at the end of it. A lot of us are angry, including myself, and given an opportunity, I'd like to do something myself personally, and I'm sure a lot many of the Indians. But that's not the right way of going at it, and we must understand that. Again, sir, it's always a pleasure and a learning experience talking to you with your experience in Kashmir, and if I may say, still a lot of grip with regards to understanding what's happening in that region. Thank you so much, sir. Till next time, Jai Hind.
Thank you, Adi, for a very nice discussion. I always enjoyed my discussions with, and as always, it has been a very good half an hour spent with you. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir.